One of my favorite Bluey episodes, if you watch Bluey, I mean, come on, we're all parents here, so we watch Bluey. One of my favorite episodes is when Jack's dad is using the GPS to get to school to pick him up, and the GPS runs out of battery, and he has no idea how to get to his son's school because he just puts on the GPS and zones out. And how many of us do that? And how many of us are doing that in our entire life? Just completely zoning out and then realizing our GPS has run out of battery and we're lost and we have no idea what to do about it. Alrighty, activate 10x. Woo! Whew. I'm excited. I'm going to dive straight in because there's a lot to go through today. It's a big one. Today, we are diving into our final skill in overcoming avoidance, which is aligning. So this is the type of avoidance when we remain, like when we freeze in place, right? So to align, what we're actually talking about are our values. That's what today is all about, recognizing where we are, keeping ourselves stuck because we've stopped following that internal compass and we've been living on autopilot instead, or we've been blindly following a GPS instead. So I really want to use that compass analogy this week to help us understand this concept and help us with a bit of a mental visual we can use when we're trying to align back to those values, because those values are our internal compass. And they are the thing that we can use to navigate our life instead of using external factors, external factors like people, like our emotions, like goals. We can use our values instead to create a more fulfilled, purpose-driven, values-driven life. That is the aim. And this is how we overcome that type of avoidance where we feel stuck. So really, that's like the purpose of a compass, right? Its function is to help us navigate. It gives us direction. It doesn't tell us everything though, right? We still have to pay attention. It won't tell you if you've wandered off course. You have to come back and always be checking in with it. It guides you through the journey, but it doesn't tell you exactly where to go. And this is different to a GPS, right? A GPS tells you exactly where to go and how to get there step by step, even if it means you're completely lost on the way. Like you have no idea where you are or where you're going, and just blindly following the steps. And like sometimes you might even end up in the wrong place because maybe there were two Smith streets in your city and you just picked the first one and it was the wrong Smith Street. And then you get there and what do? You don't know how to get to where you need to go because you've just blindly followed that GPS. And so you freeze, right? You're lost. One of my favorite Bluey episodes, if you watch Bluey, I mean, come on, we're all parents here, so we watch Bluey. One of my favorite episodes is when Jack's dad is using the GPS to get to school to pick him up, and the GPS runs out of battery, and he has no idea how to get to his son's school because he just puts on the GPS and zones out. And how many of us do that? And how many of us are doing that in our entire life? Just completely zoning out and then realizing our GPS has run out of battery and we're lost and we have no idea what to do about it. And this is where we need to learn how to come back to that internal compass we have always had, those values, so that we can start navigating life again in a way that makes us feel fulfilled. So I want to give you some examples of what it might look like if you are remaining to avoid a perceived threat. Because everything we've talked about with avoidance is perceived threats, right? It's not actually physical danger. That's when our fight, flight, freeze response comes in. This is perceived threats. So threats that aren't actually putting us physically in danger, but our brain perceives them in the same way. So here are some ways that you might be remaining to avoid discomfort in your life. Maybe you stop contributing to a conversation when it gets difficult. You're staying in an unhealthy relationship, whether it's platonic, romantic, business, it doesn't matter. You're staying in an unhealthy relationship. Maybe you can't answer when you're asked a question by a superior. Maybe you're staying in the same job even though it makes you unhappy. This kid. Maybe you just sit for long periods of time without getting anything done. see previous. If you are in a job that you dislike, you probably do this quite often to avoid the discomfort of having to do the work that doesn't make you happy. Maybe you check out and you stare into space, putting off making decisions, whether it's career decisions or life decisions, staying in unhealthy living situations. So basically, those are some examples, but basically, if you have that like niggling feeling that you feel a bit stuck, but you don't know why or what to do about it, this is what you're doing. You're remaining to avoid. You're out of alignment with your values, and you probably have been for a long time. And now the idea of coming back to that is really quite scary, because it's quite big. If you have been building a whole life around values that aren't your own, unraveling that, unpacking that can be very hard. And it can mean a lot of things. It can mean letting go of relationships. It can mean letting go of careers that you've built. It can mean letting go of safety financially, location safety. It can mean letting go. It can mean like moving completely or completely changing your life. So this response is like that deer in the headlights response. And so what we're going to do to help us start to process and identify the ways you might be remaining to avoid in your own life, we're going to do a reflection process as we do. So we're going to dip into a reflection process now. So what I want you to do is I want you to close your eyes. I'm going to put some music on. And then we're going to practice a breathing technique to help us come into brain-heart coherence, to drop into the present moment, to open our heart up so we can be honest with ourselves through this reflection process. Because we know that our brain is going to try and avoid thinking about where we're stuck and where we're out of alignment. So I'm going to put some music on. So I want you to close your eyes. And we're going to take a deep breath in over 4 counts. Breathing in. 2, 3, 4. And we're going to pause and breathe out over 8 counts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And pause. And breathing in again over 4. Pause. And out. Pause. And in. Pause. Out. And I want you to do that 2 more times on your own. And now with your eyes closed, I want you to consider your current life circumstances and think about these questions. And just give yourself the permission and freedom to be completely honest with yourself. No matter how uncomfortable it gets or how you feel, just letting yourself be honest. Are there situations where you find yourself lingering even though that situation isn't ideal? Do you find your current situation frustrating or draining, but you feel the idea of change to be paralyzing? Have you ever, or do you find yourself now in a romantic relationship you know is no longer working for you? You just don't know whether or how you should end it? Have you been, or are you now in a job that is no longer satisfying, but you're staying in the position because it seems more reasonable than pursuing the unknown? Do you find yourself complaining about the same thing to your friends and family over and over again? without doing anything differently. Have you ever wanted to reinvent yourself? Perhaps your kids have left. Perhaps you want a new career, a new location, a new health journey, a new lifestyle, but you just don't know where to start. So thinking about those questions, I want you to take some time now, and I want you to write about a situation where you find yourself remaining stuck in place. Now, I know that that could have been very confronting for you, especially if you haven't really delved into this before. It can be really confronting to stare where you're stuck in the face, you know, and to look at the reality of some of the situations in your life. Because it is hard work, because when we look at that, it feels impossible to do anything about it. It feels impossible because you've invested so much time into that career or that relationship or that life that you've built. And it just feels like, how do you even start to unravel that? How do you possibly do anything about it? What are people going to think about you? What's going to be the ramifications or the consequences of that, physically, financially, emotionally, relationship wise? Like what can you actually do about it? And it feels like it's just going to be easier to just put your head down and just live with it, live with where you are and what you're doing, right? And that is how we get ourselves stuck, because it feels easier to stay in the discomfort than to work through the process of aligning back to our values and moving towards those values and changing our life. But in the long term, we know that the consequences of that far outweigh the pain of moving towards a more fulfilling life. And I have two examples in my life of this quite recently in the last 2 years. In the last 2 years, my whole world has been about realizing that I was living this life that didn't actually align with my values and my dreams, even though I had so much to be grateful for. And it's been a 2-year process of moving back towards alignment with those things. So, you know, a personal example for me was my teaching career. So when I finished school, I wanted to study music. That didn't happen. So I studied drama, which I also love. Music, drama, and history were my 3 main loves in school. And so I studied drama and I was like, that's okay, I will find my path this way. And as life does, I found myself drawn to teaching. I was working as an aide in a school in the arts department, absolutely loved it, fell in love with it, and became a teacher because it aligned with my values. It aligned with my belief that everyone deserves the right to education, everyone deserves the right to, you know, to a fulfilling life, and education is a pathway for that, you know, out of harsher life realities. Education is a really great pathway for that. And so it just really worked. It really aligned. It fit my skill set. It made me feel purpose driven. And it was great. And it was great. And I was fantastic at it. And yeah, I was really, really good at it. But I started moving up the ranks. And I did that because I could see that things could be better. And so I thought if I moved into leadership positions, I would be able to make effective change. And the reality was, I mean, yes, I did, but the reality was the further I moved away from the classroom and up the ranks of leadership, the further away from my values I got. And the more I found myself in a position where my values were being questioned, or I was conflicted on a daily basis. I felt out of integrity. I was completely disillusioned with the whole system and its just unwillingness to change. And I was stuck. I was really, really, really super stuck. And I didn't know what to do because I'd built this whole career and I was really successful. And I had this whole identity as an educator and a leader. And I was really good at it. And I had no idea what to do about it. And then I had kids. And so I had a bit of a break. I got to have a little bit of a break when I had Evie. But then in my motherhood journey, I also realized that that wasn't going to be enough for me to just be at home with my kids. As much as I love to be there for all those moments, I still needed that professional identity. I still needed to be following my values, right? Making a difference, having an impact. But when I went back to teaching, nothing had changed, right? Nothing had changed. So I was still stuck in a career that did not make me happy anymore, and also took me away from my babes, which I didn't like either. What was the point of leaving them every single day to go and do something that didn't make me happy, or didn't make me feel fulfilled, or didn't make me feel like I was having an impact in the world? But I had no idea what to do about it. And at the same time as that, Brent and I both together realized we were completely living out of alignment with our own values, individually and as a couple. So when we were on our honeymoon, we both decided we wanted to travel. We wanted to live on a catamaran. We wanted to travel on that boat. We wanted to see the world. We wanted to work along the way. We just wanted to be nomads, basically, and experience new places and new people and new things. But buying a boat was a lot harder because we had two high-paying incomes, so we were able to save money. But buying a boat was way harder than buying a house. So while we were when I was pregnant with Evie, we decided to buy a house, and we fell into, the grind, the Aussie dream trap. We fell into it because that's what everybody does. You buy a house and then you have a mortgage. So you have to pay off that mortgage. So you have to work. And then you don't get to do any of those things that you love because you're too busy working in a job that you hate to pay for the house that you don't even really want, so that you are keeping up appearances. And we just woke up one day and we were like, what the hell are we doing? What the hell are we doing? We hardly ever got to even go camping on the weekend. Brent worked 6 days a week and then would have 4 days off. And it was just like, what is the point of this life? What is the point of this? We're not happy. We love each other. We love our children. We're so grateful for the life that we have, but we're not happy because we're not following our dreams. We're not following those values of adventure and freedom and connection and contributing back and, creating. Those are our values. And our whole Intrepid Lifestyle brand is built around the values of connect, grow, create, and contribute. And we weren't doing any of those things. We weren't doing any of them. So that was really hard for us because, again, we're like, what do we even do about this? What do we even do about this? And that's when we decided it's time to do it. It's time to live the way that we want to live. We put our house on the market. We put a deposit on the caravan. We were really fortunate because by this point I had discovered affiliate marketing. And so we had been building our high ticket sales business, and that had given us the courage and the confidence to know that there were other ways to build and generate wealth that we could center around our values. And that changed everything for us because it gave us a pathway to make that shift. But it has not been an easy transition and a shift. And our family and friends don't understand it. They don't get it. They don't understand how we could both relinquish full-time permanent positions. Mine was a government position. Like, you basically have to die to get pushed out of that position. Both high paying, but we weren't happy. So what was the point? We weren't happy. So what was the point of it? We would have just wasted away 30 years of our life. Our kids would have moved out of home and we would have had nothing. We would have had a house that we didn't really love, that we spent 30 years paying off, or potentially upgraded to another house and been paying that off for longer, in a place that we didn't really want to be anyway. We would have maybe gone on a couple of weeks here and there away, maybe one overseas trip in that time, maybe two. We would have been waiting until our kids were grown to start experiencing anything. So we made that decision. And this was before I learned all of this psychology and how the brain works and all of this stuff that I'm sharing with you now. So we were really just like, doing it all over the place. We didn't really understand what we were doing. But now that I know this information, what we were doing was choosing to align back to our values. And so for the situations that you've written down, it might feel at this point in time like that's it for you. You're stuck there and there's nothing you can do about it. And and you've just identified areas of your life where you are navigating using that GPS. You are blindly following that GPS. It's probably not even your GPS coordinates, it's somebody else's. And it's going to leave you stranded and stuck. But you can start using that internal compass, your values, and you can start using them to navigate through life one little bit at a time. It's a slow process. Like I said, it's been 2 years for Brent and I, and for myself, and for me to leave teaching and feel confident enough to do that, and feel safe enough within myself and strong enough within myself to accept the judgment and the criticism and the critiques and the fear from people who love us and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's big work. It is big work, but it is like, yes, we've talked about shifting, shifting your perspective, and we've talked about approaching your discomfort, but this is the big one, because shifting and approaching will only get you so far. If you continue to live out of alignment with your values, it doesn't matter how much you shift and approach, you're not going to find that fulfillment, that purpose-driven, values-driven life, and you're just going to keep butting your head up against the same things over and over again, and that feeling of being stuck. So we got to start living that purpose-driven, meaningful life, following our values while accepting the inevitable pain and discomfort that goes with that. So what are values? I'm sure like you already know basically what your values are. Most of us we have a sense of what they are. They're that internal compass that guides our decisions, our attitudes, our behaviors. They are unique to us. My values will not be the same as your values, the same as somebody else's values. Your values could be different to your family's values. Your values could be different to your partner's values, your workplace's values. Most of us have that gut feeling about what they are, but we don't really refer to them or check on them very often. And when we ignore those values, we're back to that GPS autopilot life where we let those external sources, culture, society, friends, family, goals, emotions, tell us how to move forward. We let other people tell us how to move forward. Other things tell us how to move forward, while we're never really being clear on why we're doing what we're doing. And that's how we get lost. And that's exactly what happened to me. I stopped paying attention to why my value, like why I was doing what I was doing as an educator, as a teacher. And I just focused on the what, which for me was goals and looking successful and needing to achieve because of all of my own faulty core beliefs that I had that I spoke about the other week. And I was so focused on what seemed like the next right step based on other people and how the ladder works and all of that sort of stuff. I was so focused on what other people were telling me should be my next goal or what I thought would make me successful. And I was completely living my entire life on someone else's idea of success, not my own. My idea of success, I remember very clearly in my first couple of years of teaching, having dinner with other teachers and being like, oh, I have no interest in being a head of department ever. And then the next year I was applying to be a head of department. Like, clues, there were the clues. So I kept climbing the ladder, but I wasn't heading towards my dreams, and it was not good. It didn't make me feel good. That's how I got stuck for years. I think I was in education for 10 years. I became a head of department in my 4th year of teaching. So 6 years. I was in that position for 6 years. That's how long I ignored it for. Because when we feel that pang of discomfort that we're not living our values-driven life, we just keep doing what we're doing, what we've always done, because it feels like the only thing we can do, right? We push ourselves harder. We tell ourselves it'll get better. It'll get better. If I just get into this position, it'll get better because then I can make more decisions. I can have more change. And then I can get into this and then I can do this. And it doesn't get better. We get more and more frustrated. Brent and I, oh, it's okay. Like you go to work and I'll stay home with the girls and we'll do this and we'll do that. And none of that worked either. Because it was just doing the same thing. Whether it was just changing jobs, it was the same sort of thing happening. And this is remaining to avoid. This is the sneaky character remaining to avoid, staying the course, even if that means moving further and further away from the life we want. We don't run. We don't fight back. We just stay. And the reason why this is so detrimental, this staying the course, even though it doesn't work for us, is because the negative consequences are so huge. You feel unfulfilled. You keep yourself in a dangerous living situation. You settle and abandon yourself for others. Like, it can even manifest in emotional pain and physical illness and dis-ease, like disease, dis-ease. This can manifest in your body when you live this way for so long. So this probably won't be a surprise to anybody, but stress, key indicator that you're living your life out of alignment, right? Stress. And we are so conditioned that stress is just part of living now that we don't even really know that we're living in a state of stress all the time. It's just the normal, but it directly affects everything: musculoskeletal system, cardiovascular system, respiratory system, endocrine system, gastrointestinal system, nervous system, reproductive system, everything. Stress affects everything. And we live in such a reactive culture when it comes to health as well. It's not holistic or preventative. It's so reactive. It's all about responding to symptoms rather than digging deeper into causes. Have some drugs, make the symptoms go away. Don't adjust your life, just have more drugs, right? Obviously, this isn't the case for everything. There are some things that you need that, but in my opinion, it's the case for most things, that we are just covering up the underlying problem that we're avoiding, that we're out of alignment. So we're living out of alignment. It's causing us to be in a constant state of stress. Our cortisol levels are on. We're in fight or flight all the time. We're destroying our body systems and our mental systems. If it's such a big deal, why are we doing it? Why are we doing it? Because instead of following our values, we follow 3 other substitutes instead of our own internal compass: our emotions, goals, and other people. These are the 3 things that you will find you are substituting for your own values. So we've talked about these a few times. We've talked about emotions particularly a lot. Emotions are super powerful. They are incredibly valid, but they are not facts. They are not facts. And usually the fastest way to reduce the intensity of an emotion is to avoid. If you think about our buttons that we spoke about last week, right? When we act based on our emotions, our thinking brain isn't engaged. If we use our emotions as our main guide, we're going to find ourselves in a pattern of behavior that's reactive. It feels good in the moment, but it has those long-term negative consequences. And these patterns of impulsive and reactive behaviors, they can lead to substance abuse problems, weight gain, job loss, divorce, financial strain, delinquency, excessive eating, drinking, neglecting responsibilities, being unfaithful to people we love, right? Like, we can't use our emotions as our compass, our navigating tool, because they are valid, but they're not facts. They're not facts. And we know this from what we spoke about in the last few weeks. The other way that we can get ourselves stuck is when we substitute values for goals. And hello, any high achievers in the room? Me, self-professed high achievers. This is what we do really, really well. So the problem with substituting values for goals is that it becomes part of your self-worth and your identity, right? Like, if you don't achieve the goal, your self-worth is diminished. And then when we do achieve the goal, we don't feel satisfied because we have to keep chasing and chasing and chasing and chasing, because the real problem is we're not following our values. That's why we feel unfulfilled. That's why reaching the goal doesn't feel that incredible. And our brain literally does that. It is wired again so that when you reach that goal, it's just looking towards the next one. So that's why you have to follow values rather than just goals. That's what I was doing in my teaching career. Go, 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 go. But I wasn't following my values as I was doing that. Same thing for Brent and I, get engaged, get married, have good jobs, save money, have babies, buy a house. Great goals, but they weren't making us happy, except for our children and getting married, but they weren't in alignment with our values, because our values, the path of our values was get married, get a catamaran, travel, be free, adventure, impact, Yeah, opposite to what we were doing. And then the other thing with, chasing goals, substituting our values with goals, is that it makes us get stuck even worse, because doing what we're already doing feels safer than the unknown. Staying in a career we don't love anymore is difficult, but we know it. Starting again, or changing career paths, or moving towns, or leaving a relationship, it's way riskier because we haven't done it before. And then the last way that we substitute our values is by substituting our values with other people's. And our parents are a perfect example of this, right? We're imprinted. This is we model by the time we're 7. Our programming. This all comes back to programming, and it's really tricky because these kinds of obstacles, when you're choosing other people's values over your own, they usually lead to conflict between your personal values and group values, and that's going to lead to interpersonal challenges, right? Between people, between partners, or between you and your family, or you and your friends. So that one is really hard to navigate, because it can be about, depending on the situation and the value of that person in your life, it's really hard to navigate coming together and finding a way to make those conflicting values work, or align together to values that work for both of you, or like finding the common ground in your values and working around that. So what we want to do, instead of living this life driven by emotions, driven by goals, driven by other people, is lead a values-driven life. Like we have said, this is way harder. It's way harder, because it means we have to face our avoidance. We have to identify it. We have to recalibrate our lives towards what matters to us. It can be really painful. It can result in losing people. It can result in, moving backwards financially in the short term. It can look like being judged or questioned or grilled by friends and family. It can look like going inward and doing the work to heal and reconnect and overcome that cognitive dissonance and address our own cognitive distortions. It's really, really challenging in the moment. But in the long term, it leads to a more fulfilling life. To live this values-driven, this bold, courageous life we deserve and desire. And it means aligning to our values and taking action. That's the key. So how do we start moving towards this? We start by naming our values, getting really clear on what they are. Then we set a bold vision with our inner compass, a bold vision for our life based on those values. And finally, we match those values with clear daily action. And this is what we're going to focus on next week. How do we craft that vision, align to those actions, and start taking the daily steps towards it? It's hard, it's big, it's messy, but it is so, so worth it. So, so worth it. It is just, it's incredible. I've been speaking to a few women lately, recording some podcast episodes, and we all have a very consistent experience and story of realizing the pain we were in was far worse than the pain that it took for us to move back towards a values-driven life. But at the time, it didn't seem that way. It didn't feel like it, because now we're living that values-driven life, and life is an adventure. It's fulfilling. It's full and rich and joyful, and we have so much gratitude and abundance in our lives, all because we did this process. We named our values, we set a bold vision, and we matched our daily action to those values. And for all of us that have done this process, we are now living lives we didn't even realize was an option for us. We didn't realize could be our daily norm. I was speaking to a lady in a podcast the other day about how we think waking up and being like, oh, it's another day off to work is the norm, is meant to be the norm. And that you can't expect to wake up and love what you do every single day, but you can. You actually can. And that is what we're working on. So I love you. I believe in you. Be amazing. thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Fearless. I hope you got some incredible value out of that episode. I would love to know what you thought about that episode, what your takeaways were. Come over to Instagram, say hello, send me a message. I am really big on connecting with my community and building relationships that last. So please, please come over and let me know. And if you know that you're ready to take this information, everything you hear in this podcast, you're ready to take all of the pieces that you have experienced, here, there, and everywhere, and you're ready to start putting them into action, and you're ready to start moving in that direction of that life that you truly deserve and desire. Come over and check out Activate ED. It is a community for like-minded people to learn how to actually implement and integrate all of the personal development information that is out there, right? Like, there is so much information out there, and information is great to a point, but it's only implemented information that creates change and is powerful, right? So if you're looking for a safe place to come and experiment and explore and learn inside a supportive community, Activate ED is the place for you. We have masterclasses, we have weekly coaching, we have guest speakers come in and present. So come over to my Facebook and check it out on Instagram as well, or in the show notes below. I really look forward to seeing you in there if you feel called to it. I love you. I believe in you. Be amazing.